is just what's the equation of a circle. And what they're working on in Algebra 2 right now is the equation of a circle, an ellipse, a hyperbola, a parabola, many of those conic sections and curves that were mentioned in the video. Remember the cone that I showed you that had all the slices on it? Circle, those are the conic sections that you study in Algebra 2. And we're going to talk about what the equation of the circle looks like to give you a little bit of a lead into that. Here's what the equation of a circle is like. So if you got your constructions done, you can pack your tools up. Let's just leave them together. The last section, 11.7, the equation of a circle. If the center is labeled HK and the radius is R, the equation looks like x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And that one is the last one on the wall up here, the equation of the circle. Other than that, we should have covered every formula now. I'm going to show you where this equation comes from. You don't have to do this creating it all the time, but the equation of a circle actually comes from the distance formula. Because on a circle, our center is going to be HK, the distance, the radius, is always the same when you draw the circle. So how does that turn into the equation that you're looking at in your notes? Well, distance formula, we're going to figure out or write down the distance between HK and XY. So we're taking x minus h and square, subtract the x's, and then subtract the y's, y minus k squared, the square root of the whole thing because we're doing distance formula. And that distance is the radius, so I filled that in. Now that's almost the equation that you have in your notes, but if you square each side to get rid of that big square root, the radius also becomes squared. So this bottom equation is the equation for the circle. What will be the specific information? Well, the radius will have a number because it's going to be a certain radius length. And the center is going to be a special number, so the h and the k will be filled in. So an example for an equation might be, let's go 3 squared equals x minus 1 squared plus y minus 2 squared. So the center of my circle would be 1, 2. The radius is 3. That would be the circle that we're going to create. We're going to just write some equations and then go backwards and do some graphing from the equation. So an example for you, write the equation of the circle. It has a center of 2, 2 and a radius of 4. So the 2, 2, that's the h and the k, and your radius is obviously r. So fill into the correct places in that equation. I don't really care if you start with the radius or if you end with the radius. I'm in the habit of ending with it. So the equation would be what, Kate? And if you want to put, instead of 4 squared, 16 at the end, that's fine. Okay. That's all there is to writing the equation of the circle. That's in standard form, and that's what we will graph from also. All right, how about the equation of the circle that passes through 6, 4, and has a center of 1, negative 8? Think which point is which. The h and the k are the center point. You're going to have to figure out the radius. You know its center and you know a point it passes through. How do you figure out the radius? Distance. You need to know the distance between the center and that point. So distance formula. 13? Okay, now does it matter which point you use for the h and the k? Yes, it does. The h and the k are the center point. So your equation becomes, Jake,
6 minus 1.
okay, don't fill in the x and the y.
Oh.
The x and the
So-
y, if I go back to this, the x and the y are points on the circle, and there's gonna be a whole bunch of points. So you need those as variables to remain. Kind of like when you do an equation for a line, and you have y equals 3x plus 4, the x and the y remain. So again, what would it be then?
It would be x minus 1 squared minus y or plus y minus negative 8 squared.
Okay, equals radius of 13 squared. So 13 was the radius. You filled in. I'd do a little bit of simplifying if I were you. Instead of y minus negative 8, let's make that y plus 8. And the 13 squared is 169. Question on that one? Okay. Next one, write the equation of the circle. Center is 0, negative 3, and the radius is 8. Lucas, what's your equation? Okay, and he simplified the minus negative on the 3, I think. And 8 squared, 64. I also simplified the x minus 0 into just x squared. That's another simplifying option. Okay. Question on that one? Okay, how about one like we did just a little bit ago? Has to pass through 2, 3 and have the center of 2, negative 1. What's the radius? 4. Correct. So then the equation is, Michael,
X minus 2 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 4.
squared. So equals 16 in the end. That end part is the radius squared, because where that came from was distance formula squaring each side. The radius becomes squared. Okay, how many got that one right? Okay. All right, now can you go backwards? If I give you this equation, can you pick out the center point and the radius? Well, the radius is going to come from the 16, right? And what do you have to do to it to get the radius? Square root it, because that is r squared. And then the center point is going to come from these numbers. Is the center point negative 2, 1? No. Notice the center point is going to be positive 2, negative 1. So maybe go to the line just above. If I go to this one, x minus h. H is part of the center point, and y minus k, the negative 1, is the other part of the center point. so I'm gonna give you an equation. Oh, that one was a little different, I forgot about that one. Had the diameter, so once you did distance formula, you had to use half of it as the radius. So that one was just a little bit. Oh, and I guess we should have done that one, darn it. You had to find the center also. But the center would be the midpoint of the two that I give you. All right, I should have done that example with you. All right, so graphing this one. Give you a piece of graph paper. Figure out what's the center of the circle and what's its radius. And you do have a compass there. You could make some real nice circles. So think of that as x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. What's the h? What's the k? What's the r? Which one can you figure out easily, Grant? Okay, radius is 4. What's the center?
0.
0, 0. Okay, so your center is 0, 0. Got some graph paper there. Might be, that's not too small. So 0, 0 is the center. 4 is the radius. Remember, don't count diagonally. Count either horizontal or vertical to set your compass. And then draw the circle. I think it'll help us to check those circles that you graph tomorrow if you will write in what the center is and what the radius is. Write down what the center is and what the radius is. And it should look like that one. With the orange. Okay, next one to graph. X minus 3 squared plus y plus 4 squared equals 9. Graph that. Identify the center point and the radius. So did you get your signs right? The center point was 3, negative 4, and the radius was 3. All right, that's what it should look like. If it touched the y-axis, it wasn't big enough to touch the x-axis. How about, now that one's not too tough. What's the center of that one? 0, 0. Radius is 3. So that one was not a difficult one. Let's do this one. First center point. What's the radius? When they get small, it's a little bit harder to draw. I think there's one on your assignment that might just have a radius of 1. You might have to just freehand draw that one. And I guess I don't know if you're taking home a compass. If not, mark left, right, up, down, mark your 4 places you know it would hit, and then try and curve it so that it looks pretty circular. Okay, so that one had a center of 3, -2, and a radius of 2. Feel comfortable graphing it? You can pick out the center and the radius. Okay, then the other thing I want you to do on your graph paper is this last type. Let's skip that one. This one had, and just by the way, this one had a 20 for the r squared. So when you square root 20, it's not an integer. So approximate it closely, but mark on the drawing that the radius was the square root of 20, but that's about 4.5 when you actually draw it. Okay, this is what I want you to do on your graph paper there. It says an amateur radio operator wants to build a radio antenna near his home without using his house as a bracing point. He uses 3 poles to brace the antenna. The poles are to be inserted in the ground at 3 points equidistant from the antenna. So there's your 3 points they're going to hook to. The antenna is going to be like centered equally between those 3. We need to find the right place for that antenna. Understand the problem? Okay, so on your graph paper, graph the points 4, 4, -3, -1, and 2, -8. Might help to have some room around it. Those 3 points are going to be connected to form a triangle. So use your straight edge. Connect those 3 points. Let's see if you can think back. In a triangle, what point is equidistant from the 3 vertices? In that chapter, we had circumcenter, incenter, centroid, and orthocenter. Centroid was the balancing point. That's not the one that's equidistant. It was the circumcenter. Okay, so how do you come up with the circumcenter? Well, equidistant from all vertices. Let's go back to this diagram I still have on the board here. This point that you found was equidistant from the ends of these chords. So you need to do perpendicular bisectors of the segments that you just drew. So each side of the triangle, do the perpendicular bisector of it. And you can connect. If you do 2 of them accurately, it should work. That third one just verifies that you're getting the right place. Once you think you have the common circumcenter, you could try drawing the circle around your triangle, see if it really hits the right spot. Are these things perpendicular bisectors? Perpendicular bisectors of those sides of the triangle. Perpendicular bisector this, this, and that should also work for this. So you might need to take compass and straight edge with you tonight so that you could do this type of problem. And if you don't have any graph paper, you probably should take some of that one too. On the problem you're doing, you should be getting 3, -2.